Dr. Cheryl Bessler is a PhD epidemiologist with a master's degree in biochemistry and statistics. Her postdoctorate training includes behavioral genetics at the University of California, San Diego, and psychiatric genetics at Columbia University. She is currently an associate professor in the Department of Environmental, Agricultural, and Occupational Health in the College of Public Health at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. She has 10 years of evaluation experience working with nonprofit organizations on youth development programming. Her research has focused on mental health and pesticide exposures, substance use disorders, and agricultural injury. She is currently the evaluator for an agricultural safety and health research center that's funded by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Other projects include a study examining the effects of poverty on mental health and physical health, increasing colorectal cancer screening rates in agricultural communities, and a public education campaign promoting early quality childcare and education. Her recent past funding includes a study of gun violence exposure in youth and development of a scale that measures impacts of gun violence. I also want to introduce Dr. Carl Jackson. He is the Director of Life Skills Coaching for Omaha Bridges Out of Poverty. Dr. Jackson has a bachelor's and master's in social work from University of Nebraska, Omaha, and he also has a PhD in social work from Walden University. I would love to welcome our two presenters today, and I'll let you all get started.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King. I'll share my screen.
As you're sharing your screen, I also want to just make a note. For those of you that have questions, please use the Q&A chat to ask your questions. And as we go through their presentation, I'll chime in to make sure that we can get your question answered around the time that you ask it.
Okay, can you see that? Okay. So welcome everyone. I'm here to tell you about our experiences in writing a grant together with my fabulous community partner, which is Bridges Out of Omaha, Bridges Out of Poverty, the Omaha, and they're also in Council Bluffs. So we're going to talk today about I'll give you an introduction to the Bridges Out of Poverty program, or Dr. Jackson will, because he can tell you all about it. We're going to talk about the perspectives of community partners on the project. So mostly that's going to be what he brings to the project, what his challenges were, and what the Bridges Out of Poverty program believed about grant writing and contributed to grant writing, and what they perceived as the challenges and the benefits of partnering with an academic person like me. And then how we planned for writing the grant and how we incorporated all of our different views and all of our different work types and styles into the grant writing process. And then some of the organizational issues we had as we progressed through the grant writing process and the grant submission. And then at the end, we'll have questions, but feel free to ask questions as we go along, and we will do our best to address them. So the motivation, let me get this out of the way. The motivation for Omaha Bridges Out of Poverty project. They had told me that they heard from different participants that they were seeing really incredible benefits to their health of being in their program. And so I'm going to let Dr. Jackson tell you more about the program, but the things that really caught my attention about the program and what they were reporting was the participants were sleeping better, they had reduced stress and anxiety, they made healthier life choices, and overall they came out of the program feeling physically and mentally better than when they went into the program. And so they wanted to take this anecdotal evidence and then try to verify it and confirm using scientific methods that these effects were real. So our hypothesis going in was that if you can improve someone's financial health, you can also improve their physical and emotional and mental well-being. And of course, we all know that's true on some level, but it's surprising how little documentation there is in the literature and what mechanisms underlie these two things about financial health and then mental and physical health, although we all know from personal experience that this has got to be true. So at this point, I'd like to have Dr. Jackson step in and tell you from his perspective. Trying to go down. his perspective on the grant writing experience. There we go. Got it.
All
Your
right.
turn.
Thank you, Cheryl. Omaha Bridges Out of Poverty is a local nonprofit. We use information from the AHA Process, which is a organization out of Texas and North Carolina, but we use the framework for understanding poverty written by Ruby Payne to really kind of guide our activities. Our curriculum, Getting Ahead in a Just Getting By World, is a 10-week program where individuals they teach themselves more about the hidden rules of different economic classes. Okay, and so it goes through 10 modules, talking about their life now, talking about the different ways that people change, the different economic classes that you might encounter, the reasons for poverty, the different causes of poverty, and then, just different ways that they can build resources for themselves. We use 11 different resources, but we also use the 10 Bridges constructs. Those constructs are more based on trying to help individuals to see things, excuse me, from the economic viewpoint, to look at life from an economic viewpoint, from thinking about the intersections of poverty and other societal disparities. Defining poverty as the extent to which a person does without resources, excuse me, to building relationships of mutual respect across economic levels, basing their plans on different ways that individuals can get to this decision-making table, trying to help to improve society as a whole. We use institutional, individual, and community levels to bring people together to just kind of take things to a better understanding of how life is. All the causes of poverty are addressed, the individual, the community conditions, exploitation, and political structures. So it is our goal to help people to really understand first their situation, and then to make their own case for change, to remove themselves from any type of tyranny, any type of instability, and to move to the next level. As a life coach, I spend all the rest of the time, I'm with them forever. Our goal is to make this program something that individuals can begin in the curriculum and then take their lives to a better future story. You can go to the next slide, please, here. Okay, and this is our theory of change as we help individuals to understand that living in the conditions that they're living in might be the cause of the situation and not just them, and so people get into the habit of solving problems, the same problem over and over again, but it builds strength. And so we want individuals to understand how strong they really are, how they are problem solvers, how their situation does not define them, and then how to use abstract thinking to get outside of that box and start to envision a future story in which they are successful. Again, we look at all the multiple causes of instability, the causes of poverty, the kind of things that individuals might not have control over, but when they do notice them and when they can see them, they can figure out different ways to break down those barriers. Our groups discussions are always around the table. We use groups of 10 to 12 individuals. We sit around in a kitchen table style setting where individuals help each other, through their own life experience. Half of the knowledge comes from the curriculum that we present. The other half comes from the individuals around the table helping each other to build resources and to also build resources in the community. Go to the next slide, Cheryl. Okay, so our partnership with UNMC has, we bring our groups. Our plan, our original goal, it has been in the 10 years to reduce poverty by half in the Omaha metro area. We did not get to the number that we had wanted, 2,500 graduates a year as yet. But, that is still a work in progress. But in the past 5 years, we have 935 graduates. And you see there that the 94% graduation rate, these are individuals who, once they get into the program and find out what we're talking about, they stay. And we also notice that of our current graduates, when they go back to the community, when they go back to their own households, they're taking this knowledge that they have. So the actual number of those who are rising, 935 are graduates, but that's exponentially expanded by all the people that they know, by the people in their household. And then their average income increase is of a net value. So this is reduced debt and income increase. And, the debt to income ratio is a great tool. Once an individual understands the debt to income ratio, it becomes something that really changes the way you think about spending, the way they think about their income and how much they pay for rent, how much everything is related. And so we bring that to the table. UNMC, we met a rock star in Dr. Bessler over there who came in with an understanding of what we do. She really got into understanding how we present what we present, understanding our individuals, our investigators who are a part of our group. We call all of our participants investigators because they're investigating life and they're using that knowledge to take them to the next level. So she brings all of the resources of UNMC. She brings the knowledge that she has. I mean, you heard her bio. She's done a lot. And so she has a lot of stuff that she brings to the table, and we appreciate that. So together, we presented to the groups and we got into just kind of starting to collect data and get into researching this project. You can go to the next slide and we'll talk about my initial concerns. When our CEO, who had met with another director over at UNMC and had discussed all of these things like she talked about, we had heard that this was improving health. The individuals that I work with on a constant basis had told me that, oh yeah, I'm losing weight, my blood pressure's down, my doctor is complimenting me on the efforts that I'm making, and we're thinking, oh, well, we're talking finance, you're doing this. So we really wanted to see how those were related. But for me, it was kind of, anecdotal, where I actually talked to our groups and I talked to our staff and say, this is a great thing. But the CEO came to me and said, okay, my partner over here is going to bring in one of their researchers and we're going to do a project. My first concern, how would this affect what we do? I did not want to be able to, I didn't want to put anything on our graduates that was going to dissuade them from the successes that they were making, something that was going to be an extra piece. I didn't think, I really didn't think that extra pieces would be a good thing. How would we get people to get involved? What would the recruiting look like for this? I did my dissertation during the pandemic, and so recruiting was kind of rough. This is a little different because I have relationships with all of our grads, but the group that we were looking to study were people who were just joining, the new investigators. I wasn't sure that they would want to participate. I didn't know what kind of incentive would be necessary to get them to participate. And I didn't know how this would benefit them. I didn't know if they were concerned with whether or not their health was getting better. I found out later I was a little wrong with that, but I was concerned with that initially though. And, and the big question, who's going to do this work? I have 935 current graduates. There are 103 in classes right now. Next year, we're going to be, we plan to double those numbers and move things up. But either way, I'm very busy. And so I didn't know who was going to do the work. And I was concerned about that initially. All of those initial concerns were addressed. And I really felt good about this project. You can go to the next slide and we can talk about the grant alignment. I did look at the information that was presented as Dr. Bessler found a grant that she wanted to use for this project and all of those things. And the grant did directly align with what we had talked about. You know, it was all about how poverty affects health. And we knew from the people that we talked with and from the people that we worked with that being poor is hard. Being poor, living in instability is stressful, you know, and so health disparities and things that are detrimental to survival are prominent in a situation where your income is low and where you really have to worry about things like meals. And so we knew that was there. And it was great for us to see some changes. It would be great. What we were thinking, it would be excellent if, in fact, this program was beneficial to the health of the community. And so with the help of Dr. Bessler and with the help of this grant, we were hoping to see, you know, ask that question, find that answer. I think that covers everything that I wanted to talk about. You know, there are some different aspects of our group that I could really get into as far as the 11 resources, the different the curriculum, more importantly, the kind of things that we really address, the 15 stability factors that we actually look at when we try to talk about, you know, what level of stability or instability an individual self-assesses to be in. So everyone in our group, all of our graduates assess themselves. You know, we don't tell anyone where they are. We don't examine people. You know, we allow them to examine themselves and let us know. And then we move forward from there. That's in a nutshell what we do, you know, and if there's any questions on that, I'm sure you will kind of ask, but Dr. Bessler can tell us about the rest of the project.
Sure.
Oh, the challenges. I guess I should talk about the challenges.
Especially your participants, your board of directors, the people that you answer to as an organization.
Yeah.
How you get those people on board.
Yeah. So that was after I was on board, you know, after my initial concerns were addressed and I was on board, then it became, well, we had to go talk to everyone else. And so board of directors, they had a lot of questions as to why this was important. I mean, but when we talked about, you know, if we can demonstrate that our programs actually do improve health in the community, I mean, that's a good thing. That's what we want to do. So they weren't as hard. The staff had to be informed about what we were going to do, because this is the whole idea of adding a piece to our curriculum, a piece to our class activities was really something that can be something that we need to talk about, you know, because our whole curriculum, the programming department over here has developed this thing down to the minute, you know, so everything is laid out. Okay. And so we go to staff and, okay, we want to add another element. And so, yeah, that took some discussions. Our participants are, you know, they commit to a 10-week program, and they also, on top of that, commit to an orientation. And so we were concerned about the ability to add another orientation where we would actually talk about something like a research project. And initially, we weren't even sure that anyone would be interested. And our community partners. So our program often, well, currently, we are doing all of our groups at other locations, at other at the locations of our community partners. These are local churches who are partnering with us, different service agencies who are partnering with us. And so we take our facilitators, our trained facilitators, into their location and, you know, set up a table in a kitchen table style and actually do our groups there. And so we had to have buy-in from community partners. There was the original idea that the groups that would participate in the study would be at medical clinics, you know, where we also have a couple of partnerships with medical clinics locally. And so the thought would be, yeah, we work there, we do the research there, and their staff would collect our data. That turned out to not be the thing. Their staff was not interested in, they're busy, everyone's busy. And so we had to change some things on that. There was the challenge of recruiting. You know, who do we recruit? How do we recruit? Out of the class of 100 who will be allowed into the group, we did initially decide that there would be 4 cohorts that we would use for this research, and it would be, you know, 12 in each cohort, so 48 people who would actually be part of the research study. And we also wanted to keep in mind those who were not interested and find out why. Who was going to collect the data? Who was going to, where were we going to collect the data? What data would we collect? All of those, you know, so we actually had some long discussions, and like I said, we had a rock star on board who Dr. Bessler was able to bring us some very good scales that would be perfect for what we wanted to know. Confidentiality is the basis of everything that we do. You know, when we work with individuals, when they come in the door, when they sign up for our group, our first thing is that this information, everything is confidential. When you sit down in a group, everything you say in a group is confidential. We are a safe space, you know, where individuals can really talk about who they are and what they want to do. How would we maintain that and do a research study? You know, and so those things were kind of challenging. And the follow-up. So the follow-up, you know, we had a schedule. I think Dr. Bessler is going to talk to you more about how the schedule came out. But I mean, yeah, it became a lot to be able to bring in a med tech to meet in different locations. And yeah, it is still challenging, but we are halfway through and we're doing very well. And I really appreciate the data that we are getting back at this point. So I think it's on a good track. We're doing well. Okay.
Thank you, Carl. So my concerns when we were first thinking about the grant writing was focusing on what would be, well, first finding the right fit, the right RFA that we could respond to, and then figure out exactly what kind of outcomes were of greatest interest. I've done a lot of work on stress and depression and some work in suicide. And my concern was diabetes is like a major problem, and I know it's linked to stress. So I was wanting to target some of the outcomes related to diabetes, like metabolic syndrome, body mass index, blood pressure, that kind of thing. Things that we could measure easily in a very short timeline with, you know, cohorts of people. And then Carl was working out the how and the where, that kind of thing. So, but I had a lot of concerns going into this because the way that the IRB would allow us to recruit wasn't exactly that fit in completely and perfectly with the way that they bring people in and talk to them, and things like how to recruit. Well, we couldn't put the amount of money we were going to give for an incentive on the recruitment form, for example. And so until they actually signed up for it, we couldn't even tell them what the incentive looked like. So there were a lot of rules about the IRB that we had to take into consideration when we were recruiting. And then also my biggest concern too was the population and how would they perceive us as monitoring or examining their health, you know, given that they have so much other things on their mind and they're trying to improve their financial status. So I was worried, like Carl was, that health would not be one of their biggest concerns here, and that I just didn't know how interested they would be in participating. But I did have concerns too. I wanted to make it a really good experience for them and a positive thing, and then build that partnership and relationship that they have with one another. So I thought those were my first considerations. And then in terms of finding the RFA and thinking about the outcomes, then we spent meeting after meeting trying to figure out like what we really need to measure. And looking at the literature, one of the things that we did agree on was the emotional regulation piece was really critical, that maybe linked the health and the financial concerns as an underlying mechanism, combined with stress and sleep and depression. And so we got together, looked at a bunch of scales, and then I sent them scales, they reviewed scales, they sent me some scales. We went back and forth until we finally agreed on what exactly we needed to measure based on what we know in the literature about the link between poverty and health. And then what we wanted to target were maybe the risk factors for diabetes is what I was thinking. And so we all agreed on what the outcome should be, what we should measure, and then moved on to starting the writing process itself. But that took a lot of meetings, and our timeline, we gave ourselves about 4 or 5 months to just do the planning and figuring out what we wanted to do in the grant and who would contribute what. It was a process, and we met regularly during the time of COVID, so it was all on Zoom. And so planning for the grant writing and submission. I think it was really important, as Carl said, that I understood exactly what the processes were in Bridges Out of Poverty, so that I didn't add any more work or burden to what they were already doing or interfere with their success with what they were doing. So I did make a point of trying to really understand how they function, how they interact with their investigators. I particularly enjoy doing the orientation sessions with the investigators and having people on the screen, just connecting with them in some way. And I mean, that was probably one of the highlights, actually getting to sort of see them face to face on Zoom. I hope to see them face to face in focus groups really soon here. And then agreement on how to best recruit and collect the data. And again, we had to come up with a system that would make it simple and not onerous in terms of their timelines to collect that data and make it and keep it confidential. So I think we were very successful in figuring out what we wanted to measure and how to measure it and when to measure it. Like should we start it? We needed baseline, we knew that. We wanted to measure at the end of the 10 weeks, and then how far out to go. Well, within the scope of the grant, we could only really go out 6 months. But the advantage is, like Carl said, he's going to see these people for years and years to come. So there's going to be, he's going to see how this all comes out for these individuals in the long run, and he'll continue to work with them as he always does. I think the biggest challenge for me as the academic partner was working through those IRB issues and some of the budgeting issues that we went back and forth on. Other than that, when it gets into like the real grant writing part, we did have we had goals. I knew where Bridges Out of Poverty wanted to go. I know that they wanted to show in the end to the healthcare system that if we just think about financial health and healthcare together, that we can make far more progress in reducing health disparities than we could just looking at these things in isolation. And so I'm showing you the scales that we all agreed on to use. I think the self-regulation questionnaire is excellent for combining these two different factors, poverty and health. We collected data on body mass index and blood pressure. We would have liked to have collected more data, but it was not possible within this study. We hope to write a grant and do more work on that and get more precise measures like hemoglobin, H1C, and things like that would actually look at clinical diabetes. And then the biggest goal, I think, for the CEO, for Roger, was we wanted to look at this as an economic analysis and say, what would we save in healthcare costs if we could get people out of poverty? And so the biggest goal here was that's where we wanted to go. We could show that we could save the healthcare system money just by moving people up and improving their financial health.
Dr. Bessler, there is a question.
Okay.
Go to the next slide. A question from someone in the session asked that they understand what IRB is. does everyone on the meeting know what IRB refers to? So if you could just kind of explain a little bit about what that is, so that everybody is on the same page.
Yes, sure, sorry. It's the Institutional Review Board, and it's the approval we need to receive in order to do any kind of human subjects research. So if we're gonna talk to people, do interviews with them, ask them to fill out questionnaires, and be part of any kind of a study, we need to get approval from our UNMC Institutional Review Board, and they have a lot of rules. You have to go through pages of forms. It has to be at 6th grade reading level. And there's just a lot of things that you have to make sure you do. And you have to be very specific about who you're recruiting, where you're recruiting them, how you're recruiting them. We had to provide the pamphlets or flyers and whatever other documents we were going to be using to recruit people. So it is quite a long, involved process to make sure that we do everything correctly. Does that answer anyone's questions? Anybody have any other questions?
Can I just also add that this can take weeks and sometimes months depending on your study and that, so, you know, really having to work with the community partner and understanding that that could be a holdup if things just don't go as smoothly as you'd like, but it is a process, as Dr. Besser mentioned.
Yes, I was really frustrated. I totally admit I was totally frustrated with this process. And I asked for lots of help from my poor community partners saying, well, they came back with this thing. What do we do about this? You know, or, I mean, we went back and forth. I think it took me all of 3 months going back and forth with the IRB to finally get something that worked for all of us. So yes, I would say that allowing as much time as you possibly can to complete that process is really important. It can throw off your timeline. And it's just one of those things that can go wrong, right? Because you don't know when the IRB is going to get back to you. And I had a lot of problems, actually.
Yeah,
but we did finally get it. We were so happy when we got our letter.
Another thing you should consider, as I was being instrumental in helping with the research and with data, I had to recertify through the clinical, I can't think of the name right now. Yeah, yeah, but I had to recertify and be able to handle any of the data to really understand research, you know, human research protocols and things like that.
Good point, Carl. You have to make sure that your human subjects certifications are up to date, and that should be done at the time you submit the grant.
Can I ask a question as well? And then just to follow up with the person that asked that question, they said they do understand your pain and IRB approval. And then for the training for the community partner, I know they have to do the city training. If you could just speak a little bit more about kind of how did that process take place, especially with how it's kind of set up at UNMC, is that you have to kind of be a member or be employed at UNMC in order to kind of do the city training. So I don't know if you took the same one, Dr. Jackson, or if they offered a different type of training that was still approved by IRB for community partners to take, because the training we take is a little bit more intensive than I think what a community partner would necessarily need to know for a lot of that. So I didn't know if there was a different training or if there was the same training, and kind of just talking a little bit about that process of getting signed up for that.
Yeah, so it is, I think it's the same training. So I had an advantage because, you know, with having a PhD, I did have to take a CD training before. And so I was already certified at a level, but to be at the level necessary for UNMC, I had to go back into training again, you know, and it was a couple of different, and it was quite a bit. I think it was actually the entire thing all over again, you know, starting from the beginning, because they, you know, it's the certification that they need for UNMC, and it's the bio component, you know, where mine was mostly about social services. So if you're going to add in this, yeah.
You did 2 modules.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had to add that other piece, but it was pretty intensive, pretty extensive, but it was good knowledge, you know, and it was important for me to remember all of those things, you know, those different aspects of human subjects research, you know, where you just, as you get into working in a nonprofit, as you get into the day-to-day, sometimes it starts to drift out of that. You're just thinking more about what you need to do day-to-day to help people to get to the next level. That recertification helped me to remember, okay, there are some vulnerabilities that are inherent to people who are living in situations of instability. And it is important that I remember those all the time, and then always be aware of the kind of biases, the kind of influence that I might have just being the life coach and things like that. So it was very helpful to me. I really appreciated the refresher, but it was intensive, and so we have to think about, as you're working on developing a partnership research plan, who's going to be the community partner, who's going to be on the staff of the community partnership to be able to be, hand in hand with the researcher, because someone has to be there. You can't really just hand it all over, because I have the relationship with our investigators, where she has, as Dr. Bessler has that higher level research knowledge. And so together, it has to be a partnership.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would encourage our IRB, as well as IRBs across the country, to think about something, a module that's more community friendly. I do understand that it was helpful, the information, but you're right, it's intense, and you already have a job to do. So we don't want to add burden on our community partners to do this certification, even though it's required, but there's got to be another way to make sure we can come up with a certification that's a little bit more, like I said, friendly to community. Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, there was one other concern we had when we were doing the IRB, and Dr. Jackson will tell you how many times I wrote him about this. But they had a hard time with the fact that we were recruiting from people who were already in the BOP program, the Getting Ahead program. So we weren't recruiting from outside. And I had the IRB come back several times, not understanding that we were recruiting from people who were already in the program. They were just adding on this additional health component to what they're already doing. And for some reason, with the IRB, that caused a lot of pain and suffering. So, because it changes how you recruit, right? You're not recruiting externally from going out with sending, putting flyers up on the streets and just taking whoever will sign up. Because we're recruiting from a very defined group of people. I don't see why that was an issue, but it did become quite an issue. So development of the work plan. So we went through a process that I thought I would list out here for you. Is the first thing we did when we were thinking about actually starting to write the grant is just define our goals and what kind of outcomes we wanted to see, what kind of benefits to us, to the investigators and participants, and to BOP, and then what the metrics were. And the scope of the study, I think we went back and forth on how many participants we were likely to recruit, and then attrition, how were we likely to lose any of them, the measurement points, the privacy issues. One of the things that we did go discuss quite lengthy about was rewards and incentives, because we didn't want something that would be so much that the IRB would frown, because these are people who are struggling with their financial wellness, but we wanted so it would be coercive. But we didn't want it to be too little, because we know that these people are working hard to get themselves into a better place and didn't have a lot of time. And there are a lot of single parents and people who just don't have time to be spending outside of what they're doing already with Getting Ahead. So we thought we had to think of all these different things, and Carl has already covered many of these challenges, but the integration of the new participant recruiting into the OBOP recruitment practices. So introducing this new health study into what they were already doing, as he talked about. And that's the part that I thought with the IRB became difficult, to help them understand what we were really doing. So incorporating the community partner and academic perspectives into the grant writing process. As the academic person, I thought it was really important that the voice of Bridges Out of Poverty came through in the grant, and their incredible work and their dedication to their mission and vision was, came through and to the reviewers and in the grant writing process. So we tried to integrate all of our perspectives into it, and so that all of our voices would be heard. and then talk about the science that needed to go into it. I guess one of the other challenges was trying to figure like what we needed to put in for the technical details, the supplementary documents, because writing an NIH type grant was new to Bridges Out of Poverty. They write a lot of grants, but generally not NIH level grants. So I think that was kind of a challenge for them. And I think, you know, Dr. Jackson can talk more about that part of it, but just going through what is needed and how it needs to come together. Fortunately, at UNMC, we have great grant support help, and we had Wendy Jensen to give us a hand on this, which was perfect. And then we had to also think hard about the budget. So what could we do with the money we had and the time we have? So that was also a challenge, was developing that budget, predicting what things were going to cost, you know, and how much time things were going to take in an organization that's already really stretched. So, did you want to add anything else, Carl?
Yeah, it was, it did take some time because, you know, first of all, the wording, you know, how things had to be written in this grant compared to the other grants. The community grants speak a little differently. And so a lot of data had to be in, and it's something that's important for any community organization. Collect your data, have data available before you start, because there's a lot of questions about, you know, numbers, all kinds of numbers, demographic numbers, just everything that's involved. So that has to be in there, and you have to have that available ahead of time. We did go back and forth a lot, you know, as far as wording, you know, how should this be stated? And it was our CEO, Roger, he's very good at grant writing. It's what he does, you know, but he too had some challenges, and it was great that, you know, Dr. Bessler was involved, and, you know, back and forth until, you know, yes, this looks good. But even then, you know, it goes in and it comes back for more editing, more information that's needed. It was a long-term process.
Dr. Jackson, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Thank you for first talking about the challenge of the data that your organization has to kind of have readily available for the NIH grant writing process. I'm also wondering, are there any, for our community partners that are in the session, are there any other tips that you would have for them in preparing for a federal grant such as NIH that would be helpful in kind of them gathering before, you know, partnering with a researcher to try to submit a grant like this?
Yeah, the first thing is just have data. You know, you need to have, and there's no too much data thing. You know, you just keep collecting everything that you need, everything that you want to know about the people that you serve, the zip codes that you serve, the demographics of that you serve. All of those things are extremely important. If you have other data, like we have income data, we have you know, debt to income ratios, we have things like, you know, increases in income versus decreases in debt, all of those kind of things that we collect. We have data as far as you know, improvement in the stability scale, you know, time horizon improvement, income improvement, you know, all kinds of things that individuals go through to change levels. All of this data comes in handy when someone asks you, you know, we want to know who your program participants are. You'll have all this stuff. You know, it is important, I think, for organizations to just collect as much data as possible, everything, and, you know, the good and the bad. You can tell your story however you want to, but you need to have data, I mean, that shows everything, good and bad, everything that's going on with your organization. That way you have a good understanding of what you're doing. You have an understanding of how the community has reacted to whatever service you might be bringing. And then when someone asks, you know, like for research purposes, it's like, okay, yeah, I got that. And you can send that right over, you know, and that really shortens the time process. Cheryl could reach out to me. Dr. Bessler could say, you know, hey, we need to know this. And I'm like, okay, I've got that. You know, and I can send that right away. And that was the delays that we had were not about data not being available. It was just how we're gonna tell the story. What's the narrative gonna sound like?
I have to say, it was wonderful for me because they have so much success that we're trying to argue that financial health improvements change physical health and mental health. When you have so much data saying that you're improving someone's financial health, then the rest of it follows. But like the premise is the program works, and they had so much great data that the program works. So we can check the box that yes, the program works, then ask the question, does it really show gains in personal health in both physical and mental? So I think the data they provided for the grant really made that argument for us.
Awesome, thank you. I'm sorry to ask one more question. I'm just curious about the process of figuring out the budget between the community partner and the academic partner. What was that like, and how did you kind of fall on kind of the amount in terms of, was there kind of a formula for, the academic partner will receive this percentage of funding from the grant, et cetera? I'm just curious about how that process worked out for the two of you.
Well, in this case, the academic partner didn't really receive any funding, so we all went to the Bridges Out of Poverty program. But there they had to figure out what equipment they needed, how much time it would take, what the med tech was going to cost, for doing the BMI measures, the blood pressure, the behavioral health questions and that kind of thing. So it was mostly a matter of how much time, and then resources and computers and software and things like that. So I think, Dr. Jackson could probably address that better than I can, because although we did get indirects out of it, I personally did not receive any funding from it.
You were originally written into it. I mean, you told us that we couldn't give you any, so it was like, okay. but it was, there was some kind of rule that they have. I don't know. Yeah, but it was, she's right. It was all about time. How much time would it take to do this? How many hours would it take to do this? And so, and then we pretty much went by, okay, someone's going to come in, they're going to sit down in here. We're going to have a med tech take their vitals, and then I'm going to do a short interview with them. So, how much time would that take? Multiply that times 48, that kind of thing, where we were just trying to figure out exactly how could we get to this number.
Thank you.
All right.
I did want to do a really great evaluation of this program in terms of, does the program work to change health and physical and mental health? And so I chose the RENAME model. I've done a lot of evaluation in my life. And so I think I wrote a really nice section on the evaluation piece. And I can tell you that my community partner was all in for the evaluation, and which was really nice to see. They really appreciated the fact that we needed to evaluate our study. So not only did it have a research component, which it does, but it also has a strong evaluation component. And so having your community partner really want to partner with you on not only the research, but the evaluation component was a wonderful thing to see. And it's made my life easier because I'm a big believer in evaluation. So I'm hoping that as an organization that they get something out of the evaluation piece that they can use going forward in their own programs. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Dr. Jackson?
Well, yeah, it was for us, it was a great experience. And I mean, first of all, finding out exactly how our program affects health. Like I said, you saw my challenges at the beginning, my concerns as we came in. So as we started working with individuals, first of all, everyone was enthusiastic. They wanted to be a part of it, and not for the incentive, but because they wanted to monitor their own health. So I was surprised to find that, and that has actually increased as time has gone on, as individuals start to see, different results. We have done a couple of follow-ups. I think the final project won't end until January, but individuals have talked about the fact that, my doctor tells me that I'm losing weight. I'm doing whatever I'm doing, keep doing, and things that just come to mind for them to really improve their health even more from what they got just initially. Having interviews with individuals who tell me that, I used to get panic attacks. I don't get them anymore. Those kind of things are important to me just as a coach, as working with these individuals going forward, but to find out that, okay, this is also showing that as a program, we are doing a lot more than what we initially thought we were doing. And so, I mean, it was super for us to be able to meet Cheryl and start to work with Dr. Bessler as far as finding out the necessities of program evaluation. I mean, I've done program evaluation before, and then, so that's why when I came into the organization, I brought along all these components of, yeah, we need to collect data, we need to check what we're doing, all of this good stuff. But I think working with Dr. Bessler has taken it to the next level. This has pumped us up to a point where we not only think about our program as, you know, what we're achieving, we think more about how we're achieving it and how we contribute to the community as far as the overall picture. I mean, we do want to end poverty, but if we can end poverty and increase health in the community, these are win-win situations. So I'm looking forward to the continued work, you know, as we start to evaluate and, you know, as we start to write up all the information that we got, you know, maybe present it to those who really want to know. But I really like that we got the chance to work with an individual who was very skilled at this type of activity, who was very skilled at research, who was very skilled at working with people. And like she said, we went in and we talked to individuals. It was a relaxed conversation, you know. One of the concerns that I didn't mention before was the fact that when you think about an academic researcher and a poverty program participant, there is a great divide, you know, and you don't know if the communication between the two will ever be something that can be crossed through. So it is important that the person, the researcher, has that kind of understanding, that empathy, that you know, understanding of individuals, of people, to be able to reach someone where they are. That's one of the main constructs of what we do, is meet the individual where they are. You know, they are who they are. Everyone has their own mental model of how life is, and many of it we speak from that. Being able to speak to people who have different mental models than you makes it very beneficial. It's a growing process, and so Dr. Bessler was able to do that, and it really made it a pleasant experience for all of us, and even our participants, our investigators, where a lot of them are graduates now, and they continue to grow.
Thank you, Carl. That's the end of our presentation, but any more questions? I just appreciate that, Carl. Okay.
Yeah. So that's all. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was really informative. I really enjoyed hearing the two of you speak about your experience writing a grant together. I would just say, are there any final kind of thoughts or takeaways for folks that are both from the academic perspective and the community's perspective, in terms of what's the most important, I guess, element to consider when working together to write grants? Sorry, I know a loaded
The
question.
most important element. I do think it comes down to understanding the community partner and their goals. I think that's what makes a successful partnership, right? Because you need to understand how what you want to do as a researcher fits into the big picture that they have and where they're going. And I think that's what we have, because we do have these we've developed these lofty goals together, where we want to go, where we want to be in a few more years, and how we want to change people's lives in the future, and just make it bigger and better than it is now, right? So I think that's so motivating, and then just finding time to meet, communicate, and always keep each other informed of what's going on. I mean, I continually write them and ask them questions, and they write me and ask me questions on email, and we get together and talk now that COVID's kind of not so bad. But yeah, I think that's what it really takes, is good communication, openness, honesty, respect for each other's work. And I really appreciate what they are doing. It's amazing work. And I can see it, in their participants and their lives, the lives that they change. So I think that's what matters most. And then the writing itself, when you get down to writing the grant, that's grunt work. That's just sending things back and forth and deciding what sounds the best. And do you have everything in there? And is everyone's perspective in there? But I think it's the communication and the relationship that drives all of that.
Dr. Jackson, do you have anything you want to add from your perspective?
Yes, as a community agency, you have to be prepared for as you get into this partnership, there will be work. There will be writing. Your grant information will have to be concise. It will have to be extensive. You have to be ready to have that partnership. You have to be willing to put in that kind of work. You have to open your mind to the fact that there's a researcher coming in, and any bias that you might have about the research community has to be put away, because that's probably not who's coming. A researcher who is biased against anything that you're doing or the individuals that you serve would probably not be partnering with you anyway. So, you can really kind of relax on that one. Again, have all your data ducks in a row, have all your data ready for presentation. Be totally prepared for any question that might be asked of you. And then be prepared to work. Be prepared to put in some of this work. I mean, I had to add a component to everything that I do. I'm a coach, and I work with all the individuals who we graduate. It's a constant partnership between me and the rest of them. But there's this added component. I have to schedule a med tech to come in against the schedule of individuals who want to come by and have their vitals taken. I have to sit down and my voice is, I talk a lot. So, I do a lot of interviews with individuals, getting data, recording this data, and transcribing this data. So, that I hate transcription, but I digress. But all of this work, it's necessary for the results that we want, for the things that we want to see, for the change that we want to see in the community and at all the levels. But you have to be totally prepared to put in that work. You have to be totally prepared to be that individual, to take those. You may have to be recertified in some kind of training. You might have to understand the different human services type of work. Different challenges. You might have to pass some tests before the IRB will approve you. So you got to be ready for all of that. Those are things to think about. In the end, it was worth it. It is still worth it. For me, it was a lot of extra work, but it is still worth it. And I still have a lot of work to do, and I will not shy away from it. It's like, yeah, bring it. I'm booking appointments right now for some reevaluations and things like that. And it is good to see how your services, how the things that you do, are improving the lives of individuals that you work with. That are improving them not only in the way that you planned, but in better ways than that. So that's huge. I feel blessed to be a part of this. I am very thankful that we had a very good researcher. We still do. And,
Yes, you still do.
Yeah. And she's part of the family now. It's like when we have cookouts, she's invited, you know.
Oh, well, thank you both so much. This is, again, this has been a really fantastic presentation to hear from both the academic and the community perspective about grant writing. And it sounds like you both were able to build capacity and skills in working together, which is also exciting to see, because I mean, Dr. Jackson, you could go and apply for a federal grant yourself now, I'm sure, if you needed to, because you now know that process. So I again appreciate that. And I do want to remind the attendees that there is a handout that goes along with this presentation that both Drs. Jackson and Bessler put together to provide a checklist of elements that you should be considering when you are partnering with the community to write a grant. So I think that's already been shared, and if it hasn't, we will share it. But I did want to make sure we included that so that you all are aware and know that if you were scribbling notes feverishly, we did try to anticipate that for you all.